全球化进程进入拐点，新的时代已经到来。
The rise of China is here. It is here to stay. It has a very significant impact on the rest of the world.
Today, even though we have many differences, the United States and China are like an old married couple. So we have a family that we are collectively responsible for. And so divorce is actually not an option.
世界格局将重新定义，大国关系何去何从？
The fact is, in his cabinet, who is the least anti-Chinese?
总统不够听的了解情况的人的话，应该多听。两个国家，都应该谈判，像那个所谓的贸易战。
小田哈佛行专访美国哈佛大学荣休教授、哈佛大学费正清中国研究中心前主任傅高义。 哈佛大学肯尼迪政府学院创始院长、美国前助理国防部长格雷厄姆·艾利森，哈佛大学中国基金会主席、哈佛大学文理学院前院长柯伟林及美国波士顿大学研究教授、智利前驻华大使贺乔治，世界顶级学府最享有盛名的中国问题专家、国际关系领域的世界级学者，从不同角度解析当下中美关系发展。 全球治理及未来趋势，小田哈佛行正在播出。疫情改变世界格局，后疫时代的中美关系去向何处
？American democracy will not solve China's problems.
That's right. I don't think any external country can solve China's problems.
中美两国教育制度孰优孰劣
Well, that's a big question that I do not want to get involved in.
风云对话专访美国哈佛大学中国基金会主席、哈佛商学院斯潘格勒家族教授、哈佛大学文理学院前院长柯伟林。威廉·科比是哈佛大学中国基金会主席、哈佛大学中国研究教授、哈佛大学文理学院前院长。作为世界著名的汉学家、历史学家费正清教授的关门弟子，他还有个为人熟知的中文名字柯伟林。 作为国际知名的研究中国历史的专家，柯伟林在国际背景下探讨了中国近现代历史，尤其是商业、经济和政治的发展状况。他将中国的经济、政治、文化作为整体进行研究。他在2014年出版《中国能领导世界吗》一书，对在中国开展业务的几十家公司进行案例研究，不仅探讨了中国经济惊人增长背后的原因。 还对中国的历史和政治传统进行了深入思考，并对中国的未来提出了建设性的意见。随着中国综合国力的不断提升，在世界舞台上发出的声音也日益增长。而近年来，中美两国的贸易战更让国际社会愈发思考柯伟林教授曾经提出的议题：中国真的会领导世界吗？
That Can China Lead? You actually wrote a book in this exact name, the title, Can China Lead? So what's your summary in short? And another question, sideline is, in your mind, is China really seeking to lead?
Excellent question. So the leadership is a comparative question, really. If someone leads, that means that they are setting standards that others will wish to follow. And if China's rise is to rise in a certain way to absolute global leadership, whatever one thinks that may mean, that really depends on what is happening also in Europe and America. If the United States becomes no longer a model that others wish to follow, or no longer sets standards of what governance should be, of what a proper type of foreign policy ought to be. The United States has enormous strengths, but I have watched in my lifetime American influence abroad rise and fall over time. When I was a student, it was the time of the Vietnam War, when anti-American sentiment because of that war was rampant. Not as much in Asia as it was in Europe and in North America, but in many ways around the world. what one might think of American soft power, although the phrase had not been invented yet, as it would be by my colleague Joe Nye, that was seriously diminished in the 1970s and into the early 1980s. But going to war again in multiple places, in Afghanistan and Iraq, this has not helped the image of the United States around the world. However,
are you saying that wars, in a historical point of view, played an important role in the leadership of America established globally?
I think the continued military engagement of the United States across the world, as necessary as different presidents thought it was, may have brought some short-term strategic advantages, but many long-term costs for American leadership.
Anyhow, I believe that it's not called a peaceful emergence.
No, absolutely not. The risk, when you think about it, for a rising power like China, the risk is really, now that China is investing all over the world, now that China has articulated this strategy of investment of 一带一路, a question that only 20 years from now can we answer or more, will China avoid the same mistakes that the Europeans and the Americans have made over the last century and more as they engage in different parts of the world? The mistake of military following trade and of finding oneself in geopolitical situations that are actually very difficult to extricate oneself from.
What are the factors that lead you to believe that China would more likely to behave differently or otherwise?
Well, at the moment, the factors would be that you do not see a large military expansion that is accompanying the Belt and Road Initiative. Although there is this Chinese naval base in Djibouti, there is a China-controlled port in Sri Lanka. You see the kind of the beginnings of what might become a rather different strategy. We shall have to see if these are simply kind of stakes that are set out to protect Chinese interests, to advance Chinese interests. The danger has always been for other imperial powers that once you go far abroad and once your citizens or your own assets come into trouble, it's very difficult to not try to protect them. And then suddenly you have a greater commitment than you had anticipated.
Speaking of war following the trade activities, well, as a Chinese, one can easily recall what happened in the mid-19th century, the Opium War.
Yes.
But as a Western historian, how do you view that period of the history?
Well, you know, I know that it is often viewed, and not wrongly, as a terrible period in Chinese history from the point of view of historians of China in particular, but also of China around the world. My own mentor, John Fairbank, wrote his first book on trade and diplomacy on the China coast in the period before, during, and after the Opium War. And one of the virtues of Fairbank's book is to discover that this is not simply a war between countries, as it was, a very brief war, actually, between the Qing Empire and some aspects of the British Navy. But it was a war that involved private actors, business people from Britain, from this part of the United States, from New England as well, and others involved in various forms of trade, including in opium and tea and silk and in many other commodities. It was a war that ended with a humiliation of the Qing, the beginning of a process of Western advancement in China. It was also a war that began the growing intersection between the Western and Chinese economies.
You just mentioned the private sectors involved. How do you think private sectors are playing their role?
The private sector is the engine of economic growth. If you look at the China miracle, really that was happening in the 19-teens and 20s and 30s before the war, and then resumes in the 1980s and 90s until today, is fundamentally led by a dynamic private sector. China has a longer and more successful tradition of entrepreneurialism than any European or American country. Just extraordinary levels of success and of internationalism in establishing business, and the capacity If you look at any of the great entrepreneurs of the Republican period or of the last several decades in mainland China today, a capacity to understand the opportunities at home while learning the best practices from abroad. A state-owned enterprise have a 1 to 2% return on assets if you don't discount the fact that they get very cheap financing from the state.
史上最惨的财报季，美股空头卷土重来，暗潮汹涌下，后市如何把握？巴菲特抄底巨亏，桥水遭遇滑铁卢，疫情下投资大神们能否力挽狂澜？疫情下的华尔街隐形战，财经正前方，今天凤凰卫视中文台。海量信息，寻求思路的突围，贯通多方资讯，提取智慧结晶，最强大脑激活最优见解。中国太平，凤凰全球连线，今天凤凰卫视中文台。
在西方世界的印象中，中国是一个以国有经济，也就是所谓公共部门主导的国家。但伴随40多年的改革开放，中国的民营企业发展迅速，华为、腾讯、阿里巴巴、字节跳动等中国民企逐渐走向世界，为中国的经济创造力和国际影响注入了巨大的活力。事实上，柯伟林对于私营企业一直有着深入研究。他认为，私营企业必须通过改革，尤其是对企业治理的方式进行及时调整，才能适应瞬息万变的市场环境。同时，作为私营企业的主要形态，尤其在中国，家族企业如何对下一代的管理者进行教育，既关系着企业能否长久发展，还会对社会和国家产生深远的影响。
Having studied Chinese companies, do you find there are ways that Chinese companies and American companies can learn from each other?
Absolutely. You know, if you look at the great Chinese entrepreneurs over the last 100 years, so many of them have begun their careers and education in China, have gone abroad to see what's going on in the rest of the world, whether it's in older industries like textiles or in modern industries like IT, and then come back and actually taken those industries further than they were back in the West. Companies
So
today,
have the spirit and the mindset to learn from outside world and the well coordination in the domestic market. You mean that is something that China has sort of an advantage. Then how about vice versa? What can Chinese companies learn from American companies?
well, I'm sure, I think that probably the most important thing for Chinese companies that are listed companies is governance, again. What works for institutions like universities is also central for a company. How can we trust these assets to be properly managed for shareholders, not to be personally managed by the board or by the CEO or by the chairman? How can you ensure this? How can you have a board and governance that is transparent and very good in terms of...
Well, you emphasize the importance of the family wealth, family education, right? What would this encouragement of maintain a family business, family wealth, create a possibility of making the society more divided, more hierarchical?
It's a very good question. In the Maoist period, everybody was given a automatic, arbitrary class label. Most family businesses in China and elsewhere are small and medium-sized enterprises. A very few come to being large. But what you are hitting on is a very important problem, a big problem in the United States, and it's a very big problem in China, is the uneven levels of growth and growing income disparity. That is to say, in China today, without question, the poorest are much better off than they were 30 years ago. But the richer are much, much better off than they were 30 years ago. And the distance between rich and poor becomes larger and larger virtually every year. It may have stabilized at a very high level of inequality today.
由于历史传统和政策的差异，一直以来，中美两国有着截然不同的大学招生制度。中国的大学招生通常是经过普通高等学校招生全国统一考试，也就是高考的选拔，最终以学生填报志愿，通过分数和排名高低的比较择优录取，所谓一考定终身。而美国的大学招生则是采用申请制度，学生向心仪的大学提交申请，相应大学的招生委员会只要同意申请，学生即可被录取。2002年到2006年期间，柯伟林担任哈佛大学文理学院的院长，对哈佛的本科生教育进行了重大改革，提升了哈佛大学本科学生的实力和水平。实际上，随着社会的发展，中国的大学招生制度也在发生变化。校长推荐制、保送制等西方大学招生中出现的录取方法，也开始被纳入中国的大学招生制度中，同时也引发了社会的思考和探讨：大学招生怎样才能实现最大意义上的公平？中美两国的大学招生制度究竟哪一种更加优越？或许也成为一个不解的世纪辩题。
Which system is more fair?
I don't think either system is perfectly fair, because both systems, we try very hard here at Harvard to make sure that we give the message that you do not have to be rich to come to Harvard. And when
But it's often the case. It's more of the case than the admission to Beta.
It's true. And in this case, for Harvard, no. So the tuition at Harvard is very high, but 70% of our students get financial aid. And if you have an income of less than $120,000 US, and this is a program that I'm very proud that I started when I was dean, you do not have to pay any tuition at all. Harvard is free for you. Gaokao is also, in principle, totally meritocratic. Whoever gets a high-level score, you get in. Now, of course, to get to Beida, it helps if you actually live in Beijing and not in Yunnan. But above all, and this is true, your point is, for most of the students in both of our countries, admission is easier to these elite institutions for the better off and the better connected. And part of our job is to reach out to change that.
What's the distance between Beta and the first world-class university? Have you heard of this question?
Of course. I think the distance is very short. So I don't know if you've seen one of the recent polls, I think it's the QS poll, has both Tsinghua and Beida, I believe, in the top 20 in the world. And Tsinghua is rated as number 16 in the world. What do you think number 17 is?
Beta?
Yale. And from a Harvard perspective, that seems quite right.
Yeah. Final.
But Beida is right in the same group.
Thank you for your answer, but actually, well, the answer that we've got, 10 years ago, so what's the distance between Beta and the first class university in the world? The answer is go out of your east gate, turn left 150 meters.
Well, that's a Beida Tsinghua question that I do not want to get involved in.
曾经不被建筑师看好的金属材料，如今却在城市的中央翩翩起舞。奇特的造型，扭曲的线条，有上帝玩具美称的钢铁，更被称为是复兴城市的首选设计。钢铁如何成为建筑师的新宠？寻觅城市中独舞的金属建筑，领略独特的建筑表情。雅居乐地产众望天下，星期六，凤凰卫视中文台。从一花窥见世界，别样文化汇进幽兰书斋，落笔之处勾勒万方美态，百花齐放，最是相映生辉，以大观之名揽万千气象。文化大观园，星期六，凤凰卫视中文台。
作为曾经的哈佛大学费正清中国研究中心主任，柯伟林对于中国的研究可谓入木三分。提到哈佛大学的中国学研究，就不能不提柯伟林的导师费正清。其实，不仅在哈佛大学，整个现代中国学的研究都始于费正清。他不仅促进了中国学研究由古代向近现代中国的转变，还创立了以地区研究为标志的现代中国学。他主持编写的《剑桥中国史》系列，成为了现在国际中国史学研究的权威教材。在中美两国社会，作为中国通的美国学者，往往被看作沟通两国关系的重要桥梁。1979年，中国时任国务院副总理邓小平访问美国，在欢迎晚宴上，费正清正是与邓小平同桌而坐的一员。40年后，如今的中美关系不再似于当年建交时的蜜月期。近年来，两国间摩擦频繁，不免让人担心中美两国会否陷入新冷战。作为研究中国的美国学者，也作为当年中美蜜月见证者费正清的关门弟子、得意门生，柯伟林又会如何看待中美关系的过去、当下和未来？
How do you think of this presidential election in America would have an impact on the future China-America relationship?
I think it will. I think it has the potential to have a very large impact on it. I think one of the challenges that China has had in U.S.-China relations over the past 3 years has been the unpredictability of the United States. The United States and China, we've had many areas of agreement and many areas of disagreement over, since President Nixon went to see Mao Zedong in 1972. But on the whole, the relationship has progressed in a predictable way and with a greater interconnectedness. The current crisis of the coronavirus is showing us, just as these supply chains become fragmented, just how interconnected and codependent we actually are one on another. And I think it's a very good thing. It's important that countries, have a set of interests and principles for which they stand that don't change whimsically overnight. In my view, these trade negotiations between China and the United States have come at great cost to both of our economies, and we are basically back after this agreement to status quo ante, where we were before. And I worry that it is, come at some political cost, both to China and to the United States. And so I would hope that the next American government would be one that is clear and principled in its stands on its relationships with China in a way that our Chinese counterparts can understand and work with.
Do you think the current coronavirus situation could prevent the realization of the Phase 1 deal between China and America?
Well, if you're looking at the absolute numbers, probably yes, but it's not anyone's fault.
Should there be some exemptions?
I will leave that to trade negotiators. I'm going to leave that to Mr. Liu He and his American counterparts to figure out. It's beyond my capacity. But if you think about how important this relationship is to both of our countries, we will have, certainly for the foreseeable future, very considerable differences in approaches to politics and political systems. The American system may evolve in ways that we can't predict at the moment. The Chinese system as well, but they are not going to be similar. But when President Nixon went to China, his aim was not to see the Chinese-American relationship as it exists today. He wanted a strategic relationship with China in order to fend off the Soviet Union and to help America in other ways. And Mao Zedong sought the same from the United States. It was often said at the time that this was a relationship of 同床异梦, of people sleeping together but really have different lovers of whom they are dreaming. Today, even though we have many differences, the United States and China are like an old married couple. But this is a couple that now has children. We have 370,000 Chinese who are studying this year in this country. They are children of this relationship. There were 0 in 1972 when Nixon and Mao Zedong met. There are hundreds of American companies, thousands of American companies, invested in China and doing business with China. There are hundreds and thousands of Chinese companies either selling goods to the United States, a number of them seeking to invest here, and I believe that we should welcome more, not less, Chinese investment in the United States. So we have a family that we are collectively responsible for. And so divorce is actually not an option. We might not speak for a while, like some families, or maybe we need some therapy. But it is a relationship that is one that is actually crucial. The success of this relationship is crucial to the success of both countries.
You believe 21st century is a century for China?
The opportunities for Chinese leadership in the 20th century are theirs for China to grab. First of all, can the 21st century be the Chinese century? Absolutely. Can it be a century for any one country alone? No. China may lead in multiple areas, but that leadership can't come without partnerships. Partnerships, for example, in trade, in culture, in education.
Do you think it was the case in the past? For example, when America had its century, did America really need allies as much as
Well,
China?
I'm not sure I don't think we've had a whole century. But no, not possible without allies and support. I don't believe any one country can lead, as it were, alone. But China can set standards in a wide range of areas. For example, probably no country invests more in education than China today. High rates of literacy, but now China is building the fastest growing system of higher education in quality as well as quantity in the world. And in recent years, up until about 5 years ago, it welcomed also foreign universities to come and experiment on Chinese soil in extraordinary ways. Second area, infrastructure. Nobody does it better. China is the leader globally in infrastructure today. And this is a dream that goes back to孙中山. Back to 1921, he wrote this book, 实业计划, The International Development of China, is how it was done in English. And he had a map of Chinese roads and railroads and so. You can visit it in his home in Shanghai. And if you look at the contemporary map of Chinese railroads, very similar to what he had planned, although now even more ambitious and a lot faster, to be sure, learning from the best of the world and then surpassing it. The biggest challenge that China faces, and this is what I write in the book, Can China Lead? And it's also the same challenge that the United States faces, is politics. How can a political system best serve such a huge and diverse population of still different, it's a national culture, but also still different cultures and different economies with different interests, different classes of people, different aspirations. Just as the United States is a federal system, China is a unitary system, but we share many of the same challenges. And we also share a significant challenge in governance. The United States, I always tell my students, has a major challenge. We have an 18th century system built on European ideas that does not work very well in the 21st century.
You think? Yet, a lot of American politicians still wanted to have other countries copy the American democracy.
You know, the American democracy has many, many strengths. Why would you copy this when there were so many?
Well, it actually reminds me that Professor John Fairbank once said, well, that was in the 60s, I believe. He said that American democracy will not solve China's problems. He's famously quoted by saying
Yes, that's right. That's right. No, I don't think any external country can solve China's problems. But China's problems are not unlike, in a certain sense, America's problem. China, longest continuous civilization on earth with a great tradition of governance. I'm actually very optimistic about China's future, the future of the Chinese economy, and above all, the future of the Chinese people.